You.
Hey, Leroy. Okay. I am so happy to introduce Leroy Simon. He is a longtime birder and Marion Audubon member. We're so lucky to have him in our midst. He is, I'm going to give you your age, so hope you don't get upset, over 90 years old and still doing nature photography. He got his first good camera when he was in the Army during the Korean War. Yeah, my dad was there too. Thank you for your service. We just had Veterans Day, so thanks, Leroy. He learned a lot about photography through various camera clubs that he joined, and for many years, he reared moths and butterflies. He now photographs mostly birds with his Nikon PF camera and 50 millimeter lens.
500.
Oh, 500. 500. Yeah, see, I typed it in wrong. But anyway, so I'm going to let Leroy tell you all about it. And thank you for coming. And we're excited to hear you. It's all you, Leroy. Thanks.
Okay,
All right, all you have to do is click that, and you'll get your next slide.
click here.
Yeah.
Okay, this first slide is a pair of
Hold on.
a male.
I hate to interrupt you. Did you want to share your screen for this? So this way everybody else can see the slides?
Yep, hold on.
Okay.
How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, this first slide is a pair of, where's my nose? Flame-colored tanagers. The male being the red bird and the yellow one is the female. And they were squabbling near a feeder. And I'll talk more about that feeder later. But this was my favorite image from the whole show, I believe. This next half dozen slides are pictures that were taken on my first birding endeavor in Ecuador. You may have seen them before, I don't know. This one is a dusky cap flycatcher. I was in Ecuador to taking these next few images, and the birds were attracted to moths that came to a white sheet that we put there with mercury vapor lamp and by a white sheet to attract the moths. And the next morning, there were several birds around that sheet. And some of them were grabbing a moth here and there and landing near the sheet. And I got pictures of half a dozen of them. That was my first bunches of bird pictures. This next one is a great kiskadee. What do we got here, Marty? Oh, okay, it went away. A great kiskadee that came to the bird feeder. It wasn't a bird feeder, it was a branch that was close to the sheet where we were attracting the moths. This next picture is a mountain, no, dusky cap flycatcher, no. A cinnamon flycatcher, that's what it was, a cinnamon flycatcher. That was one of the cute little birds that came to near the sheet. This is a trogon. This was the female trogon. I also had the male trogon come near the sheet. And he keeps jumping on me. That's the male trogon. It's a collared trogon. And it was a very beautiful bird. The next image is an ugly chicken. We set up a sheet at another place in Ecuador where I was staying at a farmer's house. And we put this sheet up by his barn entrance. So it's like a entrance to his barn. We put up the sheet there with the mercury vapor lamps shining on it, and the chickens were coming around to get moths that landed on the ground near the sheet. And I thought this was an ugly chicken because he looked like he did never spend any time preening his feathers. This was hummingbirds that came to a feeder. Where this location was, it was in the high mountains. Like elevation was like 8,000 feet. And it was kind of chilly at night up there, but it was pretty nice during the daytime. And this was a very nice place to photograph birds because they had very good setups for the birds. In this setup here, they clipped these flowers to a arm that was made for the clip things to, and then they sprayed the flowers with sugar water. There's another bird, another hummingbird from that area. These hummingbirds would come to the sugar water, and then they would hover by the sugar water, and then they would land sometimes nearby. And this is one that landed on a branch. And here's another hummingbird that came to the feeder for the sugar water. I didn't have a flash, but I used a very fast shutter speed and was able to stop their wing action. I don't know the names of all these hummingbirds that came to the feeder, but I'll maybe find out later. But at this time, I don't know the names of them. But there was a lot of hummingbirds there. I'm going too fast. Yeah, back up. This one came to some shrubs near the cabin where I was staying. This is an immature woodpecker, acorn woodpecker, immature. And the next one shows an adult. These pictures here was at a feeder that was next to the little place where I had my meals. And they had a balcony, and just off the balcony, they had these old logs or tree branches or whatever that they put up there for the birds. And the lady that worked there would put the feed in a plate or a bowl, and with a long pole, she would reach up and dump it out on a little platform there. But here, all the pictures I got at this site were taken on old wood with no lichens or anything on it. This is a quetzal or quetzal female. To get the quetzals, I hired a guide. The guide was rather expensive, but he was very helpful in finding the quetzals. The quetzals were hard to see. They were far off, and the trees were kind of thick with foliage. And he would find them with the scope and point them out to me, and then I would find them myself. I had a hard time finding them without him pointing them out to me. But this is the female of the Quetzal. And here's a male. The males and the females fed on these avocados. The avocados were small avocado, not like the ones we eat, but they were just the right size for the Quetzal. They would swallow them whole. I believe they probably took the skin off of the Quetzal, off of the fruit before swallowing it. This shows the Quetzal right after he swallowed the fruit. They swallow it whole. You can see how his crop is kind of bulging out. And back at the restaurant where I had my meals, this was more like the wood that was branches that where the birds would land that were attracted to the feeder there. They were all old wooden branches with no lichens or anything on them. This is a rough Rufous collared sparrow, and he's singing. This is a blue-gray tanager that was attracted to one of the feeders at one of the more expensive lodges. And this lodge had excellent feeders. They had all kind of branches for the birds to land on that were covered with different kinds of lichen and ferns and such. And this blue-gray tanager was flying about to land. Keep going back. Here's another picture of one that was landing on another branch. They had all different branches going into the feeder. I'll show you how they did work that out in a minute. This is a flame-colored tanager female that was coming into land near the feeder. And here's a male and a female together that was beckering near the feeder. This is the one I had in the beginning. And this is the way I had worked my magic on a computer to make it look like it was out in the wild, but the next picture shows what it was like. Marty, how can I get rid of this thing by the side that cuts off a lot of the picture? Well, never mind. Anyhow, you can see the feeder. They had spikes that were welded to the feeder. The feeder was hollow and it was like a metal pole, and they welded spikes to it, and they would push the fruit onto the spikes, and they had tubes welded to it, and they would stick different kind of branches in the tubes, and the birds would come up and land on the branches that were covered with lichen, and then they'd work their way up to the fruit. And that was one of the few places where they had a really, really good setup for photography. Many of the lodges, even the more expensive lodges, a lot of them just put the food out on the table for the birds, and the birds would come and land on the table. That's not really what you want. And this is a young male. The males are reddish, but this one is just turning color. This is a yellow-faced grass quit that was attracted to the mirror on the car or vehicle that the truck that the guide took me up to this lodge where they had the feeders, and this little grass quit kept flying around his truck, and I kept walking around the truck trying to get a picture of him. And finally, he landed on the truck and was looking in the mirror. And then later, I got a picture of him on a branch as he flew up and landed on a branch. This is a slaty flower piercer, and their bill is like a pair of scissors. And the birds, they get the nectar by cutting a hole in a flower down by the bottom where they can get at the nectar without going through the flower. Keeps jumping. Keeps jumping pictures on me. This is a emerald toucanet that came to the feeder. When this emerald toucanet came to the feeder, it was big bird, and all the other smaller birds would fly away when he came to the feeder. And after a while, they'd start coming back, and a few at a time. And then when the toucan left, then all the little birds, smaller birds, would start coming back. This bird is called a large-footed finch. It has yellow around the top of its legs near the body. You can't see it only on one side, but that was another bird that was attracted to the feeders by the place where I had my meals. This is a sooty thrush. The sooty thrush is the national bird of the Costa Rica. It's kind of a plain looking bird compared to other birds, but it's all over the country, and it has a very nice song, and it sings in the spring when it's time for planting. This is a large-footed finch that came to the, you can tell the pictures I took by the place where I had my meals. They were all on bare-looking branches. And the hotel where I got the pictures of the other birds with landing on nice perches that were covered with lichen, they were at a different place. This is a melodious blackbird. It's all black, head, legs, and everything. And it has a pretty song. This is a sooty finch. It's a ground bird that stayed on the ground most of the time. It had orange legs, an orange bill, and a yellow eye. The rest was all black. This little jewel of a bird was by the place where I had my meals, and they had this little fruit tree. Most of the time he wouldn't be around, but he came around a couple of times. And on the last day, I was able to get a picture of him. There was a yellow-capped golden-browed chlorophone, they call it. And this one came to the feeders at the place where I had the nice perches. This is a chestnut cap brush finch, and I got that on my last day there. This is a scarlet rump tanager that came to the feeder. At the feeder, they had this iron pole that was hollow. And at the top of the pole, they put a larger piece of branch that had lichens on it. And that made a nice place for the birds to land on the top above the feeder before they came down to the feed. Nearby, I had a guide, and the guide took me to a place nearby where they were feeding quail. I was hearing the quail every morning, but I would never see them. And he drove me there in his truck. It was quite a little ways away, and down a steep road that they just made it passable for the car to go down. And this was the male. And here's the female, the spotted wood quail. This is a little bird. It's called a silver-throated tanager. This is another showing again what nice perches they had for at this one place where the lodge put out these feeders. And I had to pay extra to use the feeders because I wasn't staying at that lodge. The next few pictures were taken in Arizona in the United States when I visited my daughter. And when I visited my daughter, she was inside the city limits, but they had a wide waste area near the highway where it was just brush and waste area where I could walk around and find birds that were in the wild. And this was a cactus wren that I found there. It was sitting on top of this cactus, and I can see he had a bunch of stuff in his bill. He must have been gathering nesting material because he had all these slivers of whatever in his bill, and he was getting poked in the belly by a couple of them spikes. That couldn't have felt very good, I don't think. In that same area, this gilded flicker that was had a nest hole there. This is a black-throated sparrow. It was hard to get pictures of the birds there because there was so much brush. This is called a Gambel's quail. And I saw this quail when I was quite a ways away from him. And I started working my way up towards him very slowly. And I got close enough to get a picture of him all by himself sitting on this perch. And he was like a lookout for the rest of the quail. And I see when he finally got tired of me being in his area, he jumped down and ran off, and a whole bunch of other quail ran with him. This is a Costa's hummingbird from Arizona. It is being dwarfed by the size of these cactus. I don't know why, but it kept flying around these cactus, and I kept trying to get pictures of them, and I finally got one. The only picture I've ever had of it. This is a verdin, and I believe it was probably gathered this feather for nesting material. I'm sure that feather didn't come from him, and he got a beak full of feather, but it's not his. He must have been building a nest around there. The next bunch of pictures were taken in Florida at the where they had the ponds up there at the they had trees with these woodpecker holes, and I set up on a chair and watched these, focus my camera on these woodpecker holes and stopped it down quite a bit so I'd have quite a lot of depth of field, and I would photograph the birds coming and going from the nest hole. And here you have a male at the nest hole and a female flying away from the nest hole. You can see the female has much less red, it doesn't have as much red on the top of her head. And here's another picture of the female as it was flying up to the nest hole. I like the way had the design of their wings, when their wings are all spread out like that, breaking their speed when they're coming in for a landing. This was in that same area. They had a downy woodpecker that just flew by. And in that same area, there were red-headed woodpeckers because there was a lot of oak trees around there, and they would go there to get the acorns from the oak trees. And this one is flying away and leaving a shadow behind on the branch. I had other pictures of them in another program where I had more pictures of them coming and going from from the top of the oak trees. This is the pileated woodpecker. It's the largest woodpecker in US. And we're fortunate enough to have some of them around Florida. And it's hard to get a good clean shot of them because you don't see them that often. But when you do, they're very impressive. One day when I was walking around this pond at the wetlands in Ocala, I noticed these phoebes were landing on this rock. And I was watching them, and I see they would land on a rock, and then every once in a while they'd fly away. They'd come back and land on that same rock. So when I saw what they were doing, I set up my camera and focused it on the top of the rock. And then I sat there with a cable release. When I saw a bird flying back to the rock, I would press the cable release and get a picture as it was flying back to the rock. And here's another picture of one of those phoebes. I believe it was picking up small insects from the surface of the water. I couldn't tell what he had here, but I think he had a little water strider, some kind of an insect in his beak that he just picked up. Here's one more picture of a phoebe coming back to land on that same rock. I took all these pictures in one morning as I saw these birds coming and going from this rock. It's a habit of this eastern phoebe to use the same perch over and over. I've seen it do it in other places where they would fly away and come back and land on the same perch. This picture was taken at the park up in Ocala near the Science Center at Tuscaloosa Park. And they have at the back of the pond, they have this drainage culvert like that where it drained rainwater into this pond. And I see this great blue heron standing there in front of that opening. I thought it was unusual to get a bird that was framed that well. So the structure of the culvert made a nice frame for him, and he was scratching his neck. This is a Bonaparte's gull that was in the at the Marion County. They aren't there very much of the time, but there for a couple of weeks I did see them there. This is a female vermilion flycatcher, and this flycatcher was the female came in about 2 winters. You could find him there around the second pond, but I never saw the male. And usually it's not found in Florida, so it was an unusual bird to have in the area. This is a common grackle that was photographed at the water treatment area ponds, by the water treatment ponds there in Ocala. And they had a lot of black belly whistling ducks around there. This is one of them that was flying over the marsh. A couple other pictures I have of birds flying over the marsh at the same area. This is a red-winged blackbird that was flying over. On another occasion, a different day, I got an image of the greater yellowlegs flying over the marsh. One day, I got this common snipe. Most of the time, the common snipes would be hidden in the grass, and they spent quite a bit of time around the back of the park there where the grass was taller. And this picture was taken by the large pond near the entrance when the water was going down, because it gets leaks underneath the pond. It gets leaks, and some of these ponds just drain out. And when the water got low, then a lot of birds would go around the edge looking for something to eat. And that's what this common snipe was doing. This is a picture of a cormorant that was taken near the Science Center at Tuscaloosa Park. They have a hard time getting airborne. This is a juvenile snowy egret. This was taken in one of the water areas near the lake in Marion County. And it's a juvenile. You can tell it's a juvenile because it has two-tone legs. In the adults, where the legs are two-tone, they're all black in the adult. The adults and the juveniles both have the gold-colored feet, but the juveniles have two-tone legs. This is a glossy ibis. It was taken down in south of near Lake Kissimmee, and they have a road there that goes back to a fishing area where they have boats that can be launched. And there's a lot of birds that hang out around that area along the edge of the lake. And this I've only seen a few of these in the bright reddish colored plumage like this. They must not keep that plumage very long, because most of the year they look kind of greenish color, or kind of a dirty green color. This is a picture of a tricolored heron taken in the same area near Lake Kissimmee. This is a juvenile red-shouldered hawk, and it's not quite as colorful as the adults. And here he caught a rabbit. This was taken in my backyard, and I had my camera set up. I had took through the window through the kitchen window, and after I took it, then he flew off with the rabbit. At first, I thought it was a squirrel because I never see rabbits around the house. And I think the reason I don't see the rabbits around is because of these hawks. They probably pick them off. Next several pictures were taken in Canada. My son and a son and two grandsons and a great grandson, we all went to this fly-in lake north of the Great Lakes. It was like a couple 100 miles north of Lake Superior. And we stayed there for a week. And this was the trumpeter swan that I took there. The trumpeter swans have a heavy body. It's not easy for them to get airborne. And the swans were back in this bay. And when we come up that way with the boat, he took off. And here's a picture of one of them that was airborne. You can see what the shoreline was like there. Looking at that shoreline, it looks like a very wild place, and it was. There was only a few cabins on our part of the lake. It's a large, very large lake, but had a lot of islands on it, and the shoreline was all. Some places they had rocks going down to the water, and some places just brush, and they had little tributaries going into it. And this was the trumpeter swans were hanging out back in this bay. At that same lake, I got a picture of these common mergansers, a pair of them that was swimming along near the shoreline. And I got a picture of the female as it was taking flight. This is a common loon. There were several loons in the lake. And if you would approach a loon that was swimming, it would swim away from you. If you got too close, they would dive under the water. They would come up far away, like a football field away from you. And they're a very handsome duck. Well, it's only black and white except for the eye. Sometimes because of the shadows and the direction of the light, you might not see the eye. If you don't see the eye, it's kind of a dead looking bird. But when you can see the eye, it brightens the thing up. But they're really quite a handsome duck. Here's another picture, one that was flapping its wings. It had been sitting in the water preening. And when it got done preening, it flapped its wings. We stayed in a cabin that was right near the edge of the lake. And by the cabin, they had several large rocks. And I saw this chipmunk by the cabin. So I had a jar with peanut butter, and I took a knife and put a little pat of peanut butter here and there on the rocks. And I got pictures of this chipmunk getting up on a rock to get a taste of that peanut butter. And in that same area near our cabin, they had red squirrels. And the red squirrel is munching on some peanut butter that I pasted to the rock. We went out fishing and was gone for several hours. When we come back, this red squirrel come running right up towards us. And he stopped just a few feet from us on top of this rock and was chattering at us because he wanted us to put out more peanut butter. He didn't leave much doubt in our minds as to what he wanted. The next few pictures were taken in Gainesville at the Butterfly House. The Butterfly House in Gainesville, a very good place to take pictures of butterflies flying around in the, or sitting on the flowers in the area where it's an enclosure where they have all kind of plants and flowers and wild looking, unusual looking plants. And this wild canary was landed on this flower. I got a picture of it. And on that same day, I got a picture of this little finch that was sitting on a branch near a path. And other pictures on that same day were this fire finch. This is the male, the fire finch. It has these little dots by its chest and a reddish color on its head and breast. But this is the male. The next one is the female. The female is much duller colored, but it still has these sprinkle of dots around its chest. The lake that we went fishing, that was Fly-In Lake, this was what the shoreline looked like. And this picture was taken from close to the shore. Our cabin was pretty close to the shore, but from the back a little ways, in a little clearing by the edge of the lake. But walked down a little ways from the cabin, and my grandson took this picture. I didn't take it, but I liked the way it showed the wildness of the place. And called it Moonrise over Cag Lake. The last slide in my presentation is this flame-colored tanager again. It was down in Ecuador. Again, you can see the nice setup this one place had for perches, where they I went to some other lodges in Costa Rica and Ecuador, not Ecuador, but Costa Rica, that didn't have nearly as nice a perch setup as this one place did. But I probably won't go back there again because I like to go to different areas when I travel, so I'll see different birds. These birds that I showed in this program, the birds from Costa Rica that I showed tonight were from a high mountain area. The elevation was like 8,000 feet, and it was chilly at night. But there was a lot of hummingbirds there, and a lot of different kind of birds around the feeder, and they all had nice places to perch, except for where we took our meals. They had just bare wooden sticks for the birds to land on. And I hope you enjoyed the program. I'm not used to this setup, and it seemed to jump some pictures on me, but I got most of them in there. I was kind of late for the program today because I always have a hard time finding his house where Marty lives. It's hard for me to find the place, and it's kind of hidden back on a cove off of the other road. So is there any questions?
Yeah, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and I can read them out. But otherwise, thank you so much for being here, Leroy. These photos are
Oh, I'm sorry
absolutely
I was so
amazing.
late.
No, don't worry about it. It's all right.
Well, I'm not, but I'll try not to be late next time. Okay,
So, the one question I have for you is, how was the food over in Costa Rica?
this, the food varies according to where you stay. This was my first trip. The birds in this show were my first trip for birding. My second trip for birding, well, on this trip, the food was excellent. I didn't, I didn't eat my meals at this main lodge. I ate my meals at this little restaurant along the road. The little restaurant along the road where I had my meals, they had cabins, but the cabins was a strenuous walk from the road to the restaurant. And it was much easier downhill. It was the roads through there were very steep. And I wouldn't want to walk it very far on those roads. They were very winding and very steep. But the food at this restaurant was very good, and I had filleted fish a couple times. I had filleted chicken, and they had like white meat of chicken with no bones in it, and it was filleted and fried, and all the meals were all very good, and they gave you a lot, and I kept telling them, give me smaller portions, give me smaller portions. And then on my second trip to Costa Rica, that happened this last spring, I went to a different area. I went to a lowland area. It was like a 2-hour drive from the capital, San Jose, going up toward Nicaragua. And it was about 20 miles from the Nicaragua border. And it was lowland area, not mountainy at all. And their meals were very good also. And then I had one more trip. I went this in April of this year, and we went to a different area that was in the mid elevation area. And the mid elevation area, the restaurant we stayed in, had the best meals of any place. I mean, I was not used to such fancy stuff. I mean, they would they'd have a raw carrot next to one of your main dishes. They put 1 or 2 raw carrots, but the raw carrots were carved up so they looked like a flower. And they did the same thing with a dessert. They had a dessert and they put a radish on top of it, and the radish was carved up so that it looked like a flower opening up with the white part of the radish being the blossom. And they did the same thing with some other fruit. But the chef at that restaurant was, if you go on the internet and look at Hotel Naturalistica, everybody comments about what great food they had, and it was very good. When we stayed at the two places that I stayed at, well, actually all three of the places I went to were kind of remote. I mean, there were no town or city or anything nearby. You couldn't walk into town and buy a pack of cigarettes. You couldn't walk any place and buy anything because there were no stores around. But I had a guide at the one place, and he would bring me stuff from the store. I don't know where he found a little store, but the places I was at within walking distance, there were no stores any place around.
All right. If anybody has any additional questions, post them now. Otherwise, insane presentation. Very, very nice pictures.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I missed some of them because it seemed to jump around on me instead of going from one to the next. So I know I missed some of them, but I got the majority of them. And after a while, I got the hang of it and it quit jumping. I have another program that's all set to go whenever Marty wants to do it.
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
from,
you can just send me an email or I can email you and we can put you on the spring schedule.
okay, for sometime in the spring.
Yes, because I believe
Well,
the fall schedule
I'll
is
leave
filled up.
a JPEG with Marty with the program on it. And I'll give you one that's for, well,
Yeah, just leave whatever you have with Marty and we can talk and get the things together for you.
okay. This next program is the one where they had the restaurant where they had the best food. That was, well, I got two on the next one. One was the place up by Nicaragua, about 20 miles from the Nicaragua border. And the other one was the high mountains that are on the same program. And they have different kind of birds at each place. So, some of them are pretty good. And I think you'll enjoy them. So I'll
All
leave it
right.
with Marty.
Thank you everybody for coming. I hope all of you guys have a good night. Let me stop the recording.